A sunny morning at Paul Ricard, ready for qualifying for the two races that will take place, one today, one tomorrow at the Circuit Paul Ricard. It is the second event in this year's GT4 European Series, and as you have come to expect, it is a mighty grid, 50 cars in total. Free practice sessions yesterday to give the drivers, to give the teams a chance to get used to this 5 kilometre plus long circuit. But now the serious business begins, because they don't have a huge amount of time in either of these qualifying sessions, which are one driver per session, in order to try and go for a grid deciding time. The pros will go first in the way that the format works out. Pro-Am cars for many. Some are silvers, so you put your quicker silver in first, but if it's a Pro-Am entry, it is the Pro that will go first, in a sense to set the car up really for the Am, so that when it's their qualifying, they can just get on with the job in hand rather than have to try and establish a correct setup in that car as well. On the basis, though, of what we saw at Imola, it is the racing spirit of Le Mans, Constantin Lachenauer, Gaspard's Aston Martin that is going to be the car to beat, having taken 2 victories there after an outstanding weekend. Cars on track, as you can see, there's barely a cloud in the sky, but everybody looking for clear track position. David Addison and Ben Constanduris trackside, and as ever, Ben, we have an entry list, we have a pin, you insert one into the other, and that's about the only chance we've got really of judging who's going to be quickest in this session. Such
a different circuit, though, to what we had at Imola last time out. So remember, it was quite a chaotic event in Imola with quite difficult to get round traffic, whereas here you've got the runoff area to make a few mistakes, and so many of these drivers are gaining experience in the world of motorsport.
So amongst those to keep an eye on, one is going to be Aston Martin Young Driver Development Programme member Noah Andy, who will go first. Ralph Kellener's sharing with Christian Gysi, and of course the double winners of Imola, Constantin Lachenauer and Gaspard's former British Formula 3 race, and Jason Tahincci-Oglu. He was Jason Tahincci when he raced Formula 3, but he's gone for his full title these days. Reigning British GT4 champion Will Burns in another of the BMWs, but you keep scrolling through the entry, and there are impressive drivers in just about every car, including number 22 Porsche, the Allied racing car of Vincent Andronico, who was very, very impressive in the first race at Imola. Also, he's racing in the German Championship as well and has been very rapid in that. He's back with Andreas Mayel this weekend. They were together at Imola, but Andronico, I think, is another possible candidate for pole position. So is Tom Canning, who, again, as a British GT4 champion, is one to watch. There's Hendrik Still. There's Greg Gilbert, who is always rapid, and Adrien Tombe as well. We discover in GT4 machinery, former Formula 3 and DTM racer. Patrick Tombe's son. So another one to watch. And the entry list just keeps on scrolling through. More names leap out at you.
Yeah, Adam Carroll there for Greystone GT. First experience. Jean-Baptiste Meller, winner of the Alpine Championship last time, and therefore partnering Laurent Hurtgen this time out. And further down, we should also have the Alex Fontana, Ivan Giacomoa car. Yes, of course, that's the very last one. So we've got another page worth. 50 cars in total, just a couple shy of what we saw in Imola, but still a great entry list. And because also GT4 is so popular in France, so many of those French teams and drivers know Circuit Paul Ricard well and are happy to come and race here.
And in theory, should have a little bit of circuit knowledge. Now, the cars have made their way from the outer paddock round to the pit lane, and they will start the session from there. So you've seen the cars on track, but not actually with the session being live. That was to bring them round to the pit lane from where the session will start in about a minute and a half's time. And perhaps inevitably, those that are thinking ahead are eager to get out. So they were at the head of the queue in the assembly area to get round to the pit lane. Don't stop with the team, go to the end to get to the fast lane, because with only 20 minutes, then finding clear track space, absolutely vital.
Yeah, absolutely. We don't have that big, long 1.1 kilometre straight for the GT4 cars like we see for GT3. They do take the chicane, which is used in Formula 1 and various other categories that come and visit here. So you don't have that same need for a slipstream that you might do if this was full flat-out 1.1 kilometres in a GT4 car, you would be desperate to sit behind somebody along that Mistral straight and into Senior. Otherwise, then you can very much get held up in the more fiddly bits around the first and last sectors of the lap.
Enzo Juliet in the NM Racing Mercedes there that he shares with Ibanez. New combination of drivers. Ibanez we got used to seeing initially in a Ginetta and then being very successful in the Mercedes last year. Enzo Juliet has switched teams, switched brands for this year. Again, you've got the likes of Audi, Mercedes, Aston Martin, Toyota, BMW, Chevrolet, Porsche, Alpine, all on the grid. McLaren, which one have I missed? That covers off most of them.
Toyota.
I thought I'd said Toyota.
Maybe.
Okay. But the point is, if I did miss one, thank you, Ben, that he's a nice, varied grid. It has not become a one-make category, has it?
And remarkable to try and then balance those cars. Something like a Chevrolet Camaro balancing a McLaren, balancing a Toyota Supra. An amazing job by the guys at SRO to make sure that all the cars perform in equal fashion. Perhaps they perform better some down the straights and others will perform better in the corners. But ultimately, over a one lap with the same driver, the idea is the cars perform in the same way.
I did ask Mark McLaughlin of Greystone GT that operates the Adam Carroll, Tim Whale McLaren, for example, is this a McLaren circuit? And the answer was anything that's not Imola is a McLaren circuit, because that was not the finest for a McLaren, but this is flatter, it's smoother, nice long straights. But, of course, the proof will come at the end of 20 minutes. Adam Carroll goes first in the number 47 Greystone GT entry. Now, others biding their time in the pit lane. Hendrik Still there, number 38. He should be a candidate for pole position, I would have thought. Vastly experienced driver, very versatile GT racer as well. So as the cars now venture out on track for their first lap, their out lap, track position is ever crucial. Some want to be ahead of the queue and therefore try and get away. Others bide their time, let the traffic go before they head out onto the circuit.
This qualifying one, and then we will have a second session for the second drivers. In theory, qualifying one is for the more experienced driver, not necessarily the pro, because we have bronze pairings, we have silver pairings, as well as the mixed pairings. So we might have some guys in this particular session at the very top of their game, with others who are perhaps much, much less experienced. So in a way, this field, it will have a bigger field spread than we will see in the second session, where the majority of them are the less experienced driver. That there can also be, in the world of GT4 racing, a driver that's done a couple of years of Formula 4, for instance, and many years of karting, but not very many years in GT cars. That could still rate you as a silver or even a bronze driver. A lot of young chargers in here hoping to progress to Formula GT3. We
do tend to get a bit, not hung up, but do focus on the balance of performance, understandably, and what a great job is done to balance all the different cars. Actually, the same is true on the human side, isn't it? Because as you make the point, you're trying to balance and categorise quick AMs, young chargers, and the FIA driver grading categorisation system normally works very, very well. But yes, it's as hard to do that with people as it is with cars, really.
Yeah, how you can categorise and pigeonhole every individual to kind of call them the same kind of grading. It's an impossible task, but the SRO have developed over the years a very, very good system, which seems to work very well. Not everyone will always be happy with it, especially if you're a driver who is upgraded from a bronze to a silver. That usually upsets you, because it then kind of almost penalises you when it comes to pairings going into various seasons. The grading applies to GT4 as it does to GT3 as well.
Indeed so. Right now, we can start to focus on flying laps, because they're onto their first flyer. 61 is Benjamin Ricci in the father and son combination. He is son. Dad Mauro takes over the Acudis ASP Mercedes as he heads then now down towards the chicane that takes you to Saint-Baume, which is this next right, and then you go right again up towards L'École and then onto the Mistral Straight. And guess what? He's found himself in some traffic. The car in question does dart out of the way there, the Porsche, but again, last thing you needed, because that 10th could be 5 rows of the grid. Certainly in the GT4 category, you're absolutely right. It's a long lap for these guys. You would, in theory, expect it not to be so tight, because there are many opportunities to get things slightly wrong or do things slightly different, but somehow in the world of GT4, it still becomes an incredibly tight battle, and really luck and drama that we see across the 1 hour races tends to decide the winners. Now, amongst the names to look in this, we didn't yet mention all of them, but Jim Plar is one, Alex Fontana is another that Ben did touch on. Antoine Potty ought to be a candidate for the top time, and so too, potentially, Adam Carroll. I mentioned Vincent Andronico after his great efforts at Imola. But it really is going to be perhaps one shot, isn't it? And that's when you've got to get everything hooked up and be clear of the traffic, and also be mindful of track limit abuses, as you see there going through the Toyota number 8, the Supra, in the hands of Etienne Shelley and Corentin Souran. Well, Ricci's caught him having been the fastest man through the second sector of the lap and had to go offline to overtake. So that certainly is going to compromise him. I would have thought that the Toyota would have jumped out the way, considering he's still on a warming up lap. But unfortunately, Ricci's
going to be slightly compromised there, and he has caught the end of the train. So first man out of the pits, you would think you get clear track, but look at the people now preparing themselves for a lap, and he's really caught out in that final sector.
I mean, again, that's the problem. You can be first in the queue and think happy days, clear track space, but by the time you get to the end of a flying lap, you've got all the slow cars, like you say, that are only just totted out of the pit lane and aren't on a flying lap. So Ricci does do a 2:17.3 as the target from second fastest, number 34, the Sellerslach Mercedes of Alexandre Papadopoulos, the silver-graded American driver. And then third, briefly, Markus Lundstrass. He is then beaten in turn by Kenton Koch, another of the American drivers. And all of a sudden, we're down to 5 minutes done. 26 Audi goes through for the Team Full Motorsport car. Cyril Salai's very distinctive Audi. The GT4 has a night race. That car ought to win, but as it heads up towards the timing line.
As we learned in the next round at Spa. Not the next round, because we've got Misano before Spa, but the first race at Spa, it starts at 8 o'clock at night.
That's right, and it will be going dark.
Yeah.
And if it's Spa, it's probably raining anyway. So you're right. That's for the busy weekend that is part of the Total Energies 24 hours of beer at Spa. Sorry, I was right the first time, wasn't I? It is 24 hours of beer. To the chicanes, they turn. So as Ben was making the point, the Mistral interrupted for the support categories. And again, with AMS in the field, it's understandable, isn't it, that they can temper that pace before they arrive at the ultra-fast seniors corner at a very, very great rate of knots. Now we're getting purples in sectors, you might anticipate. Cyril Salai with the Audi went quickest on a 2:17.210. Way out wide there at senior they go, but you can see those little markers that are tapered to try and usher you back onto the circuit. You can go wide, but as long as they're on your left where you rejoin, that's fine. Go the wrong side of them, then you get in strife.
I'm focusing on Jimmy Pla because he was the fastest man in free practice. A clean sweep for that car yesterday. They had a good day, didn't they, at Codis ASP? Not only did they take the fastest times in practice for GT4, they also won the sim race that happened last night. And let's see if they can translate that Mercedes performance into qualifying. Here's another one, teammate Simon Gachet in the 81 machine behind Jimmy Pla, and purple in both sectors 1 and 2. Now to the end of the lap, with help perhaps from Pla. He's a bit far away to actually gain a slipstream, but this should put him to the top of the times.
So over the timing line goes the Mercedes. Now that's 81 of Simon Gachet, and he does go quickest, and Jim Pla behind ends up being 7th. Gachet's time 2:12.5 now. Simon Gachet, like Jim Pla, somebody that's able to jump from GT3 to GT4 machinery, and also a bit like Jim Pla, does not have a big budget to go racing, so he has to do this purely on ability and hooking up with the right co-driver, the right AM, to help fund the racing. But Simon Gachet, whether it's in Audi, whether it's in Mercedes, is talented, and so too is Tom Canning, who is now second fastest. So the British driver up to second now, the margin 0.4 of a second between them, and we're almost at halfway. Now Jim Pla is pushing on. We'll see what he can do in the first sector on this lap as they head on to the Mistral straight. Jim Pla dropping down the order. He's currently 17th, but having done an absolute best in the first sector, if he can get it all hooked up, this would put him up at the top. Yeah,
I wonder if there was a little bit of work going on between the two teammates there. Gachet obviously benefiting a lot from sitting behind Pla on that first lap. He's still behind him now and not setting better sectors. Kind of equaling, actually, Jimmy Pla's pace. So Pla down in 17th, Gachet on the pole, and on the pole by half a second at the moment over Tom Canning. We've got 5 different brands in the top 5 cars, with an Aston in second, Toyota third, Audi fourth, and Alpine in 5th position. But Pla looks as though he's going to equal. In fact, Simon Gachet going faster than him in the second sector of the lap. Oh, Pla runs off wide. Is that the line? Can you go full wheels off at the exit of Beausset? Both himself and Simon Gachet doing the same thing. But it does seem as though 4 wheels off. They're trying to open the corner as much as possible to keep the pace and the acceleration. But both Mercedes running very, very wide through Beausset. And now to the end of the lap. Let's see if Pla should certainly improve, although he's got a little bit of traffic with an Audi ahead. What is Simon Gachet going to do? Is it going to be Mercedes 1-2?
On pure pace, you wouldn't bet against it, would you? The expectation for Gilbert is pole position with an absolute best, with a personal best, and yes, it is pole at the end of the lap then, so he does a 2:12.5, but then he's beaten straight away by Simon Gachet by a 10th, and Gachet dropped time in the last sector, but sectors 1 and 2 were so good that it all hooked up enough that he was able to go top. So it's a Mercedes 1-2 right now. Tom Canning, Aston Martin third, Antoine Potty fourth in the Toyota. 47, that is Adam Carroll. Now, where is Adam out of all of this at the moment? The Greystone GT McLaren, he says, hunting down the order. There's more to come from that car, certainly, because it's, what, 31st only.
Yeah, we've got McLaren's ahead as well. We've got Weller in 20th position, I believe. So, of the two McLarens, Adam is the slower of the two, which will certainly, when you want to compare yourself to equal machinery, he's losing out there as Lachenauer comes towards the lines, down in 40th position right now. This should be an improvement, and yes, indeed, up to 6th spot. We've just got about 45 cars who've set times, about 5 missing therefore. Grégoire Gilbert yet to get a representative lap. We should see him improve from 45th right now.
Antoine Potty has just got himself up to 4th in number 66, the CMR Toyota. So Antoine Potty looking rapid at the moment, and Alex Fontana in the number 718 Porsche Cayman up to 5th fastest. Now Fontana is a man to watch. Lachenauer, who was way back, into the top 6. There is Konstantin Lachenauer, and he's going to go quicker again, isn't he, now, because he's 4/10ths better off than he was last time. So doing a good job here. Lachenauer getting faster and faster as the session wears on.
Plenty of green sectors still across the board, really. It does seem as though the cars are improving and getting up to speed and getting the best out of their tyres. Not so many yellow sectors, just really from the guys that perhaps showed their hand early. The front 4-5 cars not necessarily improving. Gachet, Verdonk now in 2nd position, Canning now 3rd, Lariche 4th, Potty 5th. So how is Gachet and... Okay, I think we must have lost a time from Jimmy Pla there, because he's disappeared from our timing screens. Where is he? He must be on page 2. Yes, down in 39th position, so he's had his time disallowed for sure, and I wonder if that's a track limits issue.
It's tempting to lean that way, isn't it, because it is the age-old drama around here. So Jim Pla has got to do it all over again. Up to 2nd fastest then now goes Nico Verdonk in the Pro Sport Aston Martin, another experienced driver, Nico Verdonk, so he goes 2nd, but half a second back from Simon Gachet. Enzo Juliet is currently 8th, that we were talking about earlier on pre-session as one to watch. And Greg Gilbert, who granted is in the Pro-Am category, but currently only 9th, but he's another one that you might anticipate for the Audi squad. Santaloc to be up at the pointy end by the end. Konstantin Lachenauer up towards the timing line, so Lachenauer tries to go quicker. Is it going to work for him as he breaks the beam? 6th fastest, so Lachenauer does improve, 2:13.132. That brings him closer to the front, and Jim Pla has got to have another go at this.
Got to have another go, yeah, absolutely. 43rd position, and really hasn't set a representative lap time. Okay, so he's okay through senior, but now Beausset, this is what we saw earlier, runs off track, but then Simon Gachet does exactly the same thing behind. So Jim Pla's lost his time. Do we expect Gachet to lose his time as well? Now we come to exactly the same corner a couple of laps later, and he does hold himself just that little bit tighter, keeps the car 4 wheels within track limits, and therefore this lap should count if he hasn't made any transgressions elsewhere.
Fingers crossed.
Easy one to do though at Beausset. If you just carry a bit too much speed, you kind of 4-wheel drift to the outside of the circuit, off track. You can still bring it back to get the apex, which is quite late in the corner, and then straight line to the next particular corner. But I think Jimmy Pla there just carrying a bit more speed, and Simon Gachet dragged to do the same thing as well. Verdonk from 2nd position into the pit lane.
Now, is that work done with 6 minutes to go? If you think you've done all you can, save a bit of life in the tyres, get the car ready for your co-driver. Nico Verdonk shares with Roderick Guillon, who is less experienced. Simon Gachet will hand the 81 Mercedes to Eric Debar. But Jim Pla 3rd fastest, 2 minutes 12.941, still pressing on, still trying to improve if he can. Potty 4th, Canning 5th, he's pitted. Benjamin Lariche, former Formula 2 racer, 6th. 7th now is Jos Raponge. So the V8 Racing, sorry, Dante Raponge, brother of Chevrolet, is now 7th quickest in the 213s. There it is. All that grunt about to pay dividends on the Mistral Straight. Traffic permitting.
Yes, again, another kind of quite large front end to that car, so would like a slipstream to sit behind just so it doesn't have to punch as big a hole into the air. You know, compare the front end of that to a McLaren and then try and balance them up. Quite a big job for the guys in charge of the GT4 category at SRO, but they do manage it so very well. It's Mercedes, Aston Martin, Mercedes, Toyota front 4. Best of the Audis, Benjamin Lariche in 6th. Then this Camaro in 7th position. Best Porsche is Fontana in 9th. And best McLaren is now Adam Carroll down in 13th spot. So he has improved. But as we come to the final 5 minutes of the session, less and less green sectors on our timing screens. And just Vincent Andronico missing from setting a lap time. Now he does so.
He does. Yes, I was heading to him. You're right, because he, I think, had been biding his time. He's gone 15th on his first lap, Vincent Andronico. But what he's done is go out late, save himself one run, and therefore keep a bit more life in the tyres, and it's worked out nicely for him.
Well, we've seen you're able to do green sectors for about 3 laps, so maybe Andronico will continue to improve if that was his first lap time. We do see him see that he's visited the pit, so he may have had a small gremlin at the start of the session, gone out, come back in, fix that gremlin. It took 3 minutes to do so, and now start setting time. So a few cars in pits, it means he's got a few less cars to contend with regards to traffic, and we might see that car improve a bit further. There's another one down the back end of the field I would expect to see, Julien Prichet in the Alpine, sometime touring car driver, but now after a year in the Alpine Cup, 49th spot. Expect to be better than that.
Yeah, absolutely. And another one that's a long way down is Adrien Tombe, who's only 21st at the moment. As up towards the line goes Mathieu Herrero in the very pretty little Alpine. A lot of support for these cars on home soil, but as others are still chasing a 10th here and there, others have already bailed and are concentrating on the second part of qualifying.
I wouldn't put it past the Automobile Club around the area to bring a whole fleet of Alpines. They do tend to support their own when there is a race or a rally locally. So I'm sure in the paddocks around the area we'll see all of the supercars. There's a GT1 display in the paddock here, Sports Club in Paul Ricard, but there's also plenty of other, decent amount of fans actually coming in, as we've seen over the last couple of rounds of the GT World Challenge. Suddenly have to contend with traffic once more to get into the circuit.
It's certainly impressive at Imola how many people, and Brands Hatch as well, we had for the GT World Challenge Europe, the Fanatec GT endurance and then sprint rounds. And with Valentino Rossi on a GT3 grid, there's going to be no shortage of people, I'm sure, here this weekend. As you now look at the car that is currently 35th in the times, which is the W&S Motorsport Michael Loboda driven Porsche.
Andronico's now had that lap taken away from him and is back in the pits. So not particularly happy hunting for the number 22. Allied Racing Porsche. He'll hand that car over to Andrea Mayo for the second session, who is the AM in the Pro-Am category car.
Now, Mayo is not slow, but equally, that is a long, long way down the order. And if they can't get a lap time in and they have to start at the back of a 50-car grid, that really does condemn them for the opening race, because, OK, you might buy a few places on the first lap as others trip over themselves, but that's still a huge amount of work to do in a relatively short race.
Potty, one of our top 10 that hasn't pitted yet, still going around in the CMR Toyota. Champion last year, number 66, and sits 4th on our grid right now with Pla, Verdonk and Gachet ahead. Now, interestingly, he does hit the pits now. Verdonk's come back out, has pitted and now back out. So maybe a little tyre pressure adjustment to see if he can get something out of the last minute and a half of the session, or a little change just to test that change for when they go racing later on today.
But, as you say, with a minute and a bit remaining, that's it as far as Andronico is concerned, because he won't be able to get an outlap done. So, big, big drama for the Imola pole sitter. Right, this is the Greystone GT McLaren, coming then up now to Beausset, and number 60 is the car with Alex Voller at the wheel of it, who's come into the team this weekend to replace Alain Vallon, who's a bit busy with his GT3 commitments, and he can't do all the debriefing for GT3 and get himself in GT4 mode, so he sits the GT4 element of the weekend out, but will be back later on in the year for Mark McLaughlin's team. Right, the flag is imminent. We have still got improvements because we just got up to 6th by David Ortman, so an improvement late session 2:13.0 does come, but there's a big question mark over Andronico and why they spent so much time in the pit lane.
Yeah, absolutely. To come in so early on, to get a lap time and then have that lap time disallowed as well. You know, at least he got a banker in. It wasn't necessarily pole position, but it was inside where you need to be for the race. And to have that disallowed and thrown back down to 50th spot on the grid will be very disappointing. And now they need to try and get that car fixed for the second session if there is an issue, which we would suspect it is, with 2 pit stops across the session.
Yeah, whatever it is, clearly there is something not right, which is bizarre given that it seemed okay in free practice yesterday. But either way, that, as you say, is a car with a problem. The flag is out, so Simon Gachet tops the times, does so by, in the end, over half a second from Nico Verdonk. So you've got Mercedes, Aston Martin, Mercedes, Toyota, Aston Martin in the top 6, all grunty front-engine cars.
Should be good. Good to see 3 Aston Martins there in the top 6 after they were a little less from the front in Imola. We've got 4 inside the top 10.
And there is the troubled Vincent Andronico Porsche with the attention going around the front right corner there. He had an off or something, which is troubling them because it almost looks like they're pulling something from around the bodywork or the wheel.
Ah, those little floppy bollards can do a bit of damage if you do hit them. They are designed to be floppy. But yes, it's got a little bit of rubber on the bumper as well.
There's a witness mark on the front right as you look. There it is, under the DI in Casa Rinaldi. So he's clearly clipped something or somebody.
Yeah.
And maybe that was one of the reasons for a pit stop, to check over any damage. But the net result is that Vincent Andronico is going to start last on the grid. It'll make the first few laps of the first race well worth watching as you look at number 50 BMW, the car shared by Max Tresoldi and Paolo Melloni. So a chance for the drivers to have a quick word with one another. The driver getting out can pass on any hints about the car or indeed the circuit to the second driver ready to get on board.
And of course the first driver, being the pro, is there to train the lesser experienced driver who come out in the second session. So even in qualifying there is a flow of information to try and maximise the performance of your less experienced driver in the most part, because of course we do have quite a few drivers in the Silver Cup whereby you have 2 silver drivers, and so in theory in the world of grading they are of equal standard. So in the Pro-Am, yes, you have a Pro and then an Am. Alex Fontana will be handing over to Ivan Giacomo, who is the bronze in that car, so Fontana can educate Giacomo on where to push and what to look out for on this Paul Ricard circuit.
But Giacomo is another experienced driver who has done many a lap in Porsches in all sorts of series, and Alex Fontana we've seen, of course, being very quick in GT3 and in esports, GT racing last year, but now the gun for hire in a GT4 car. So new set of Pirelli tyres goes on up and down the pit lane. All the teams go to work in this brief break between sessions to change the boots, to get the cars set ready for the second session. Remember, what we've had determines the grid for race 1. This determines the grid for race 2. Completely separate grids then. 1 driver, 1 session, 1 grid. And a few moments for them just to get on board, settle themselves in. The pit window is between 25 and 35 minutes of the race, with 88 seconds for this being the delta time from the pit in line to the pit exit line.
Today's race at 4:15 local time. It'll be very much the heat of the day, and then race 2 tomorrow morning.
So let's have a look at the order then at the end of Q1. This, as I say, determines the grid for the first race. 2 minutes 12.398, the best time set by Simon Gachet. Second fastest, Nico Verdonk, and third being Jim Clark, half a second between the top 2. Antoine Potty fourth ahead of Tom Canning, so Toyota ahead of Aston Martin, ahead of David Ortman next in his Aston. 7th, Benjamin Lariche in the best Audi, ahead of Dante Raponge in the Chevrolet, then Constantin Lachenauer and Alex Fontana's Porsche rounding out the top 10 from Enzo Juliet, Greg Gilbert, Adam Carroll 13th at the better McLaren, then Hendrik Still and Jean-Baptiste Mella, who did get on with the job late in the session, the Alpine champion, to go 15th. 16th fastest another of the Santalok Audi fleets, the Israeli driver Roy Miras from Julien Brichet, and Berke Besler's BMW from Anthony Veltoir's Ralph Kalliner's and Adrien Tombe. Gabriele Yilkova doing a good job to be 22nd from Stanislav Savronov and Antoine Leclerc a long way back. 25th, Kenton Koch with Matteo Herrera's Alpine, Philippe Barber next ahead of Wilfried Casabon, Etienne Chiali's Toyota and Benjamin Ricci's Mercedes. 30th, 31st, another of the Alpines, which was Simon Tierman's car from Moritz Wiskirchen and Markus Lundstrass. Alex Voller in number 60 McLaren next from Mikael Laboda, Thomas Martinez, Alexandre Pomodopoulos, Michel Blanchemont, and then Yadish Gedic with Ruben Del Sart a long way back, rounding out the top 40. The Gysi family 45th, and still there are cars to go after that, because 50 in total, but only 49 credited with 8 time. Vincent Andronico then losing out for what we think was a track limits offence, but Andreas Mayel now takes over that car, number 22, and he's going to be one to watch, because Ben, if we get an idea of Mayel's pace, we know that Andronico was a bit quicker at Imola, so that'll tell us either way whether or not the car's competitive.
Yeah, absolutely, and if they have managed to fix whatever issue has befallen them, although by the looks of the lack of work going on the car, the lack of computer being plugged in and heads being scratched, it does seem as though they know what the issue was and they need some duct tape to fix it.
So the car's getting set for Q2, and that will be underway very shortly. So that should be a green flag in about 2 minutes' time or so. A quick look at what happened in Q1, which is actually quite calm, relatively speaking. Despite the number of cars, we didn't have too many people tripping over one another as the lights went green, and those that were eager to get on with the job pouring out onto the circuit. So the circuit's initially offering up good times to those that were out first, as you would anticipate. Benjamin Ricci with the Mercedes, one of the many here this weekend from Acodis ASP, looking quick early on. Threading his way through the traffic, up through Bandor. Also rapid to begin with was Cyril Salai with the Audi. But Jim Pla, as ever he does, took up attention. In the end, it was a case of him versus Simon Gachet trading the top spot. And third would be Jim Pla's reward, despite losing laps for running wide and exceeding track limits. Dottir Raponge in the Chevrolet also going nicely and getting that car into the top 10, adding yet more variety. And another rapid car for second fastest Nico Verdonk, but Simon Gachet's Mercedes topped the times at the end of Q1. So cars making their way down to the end of the pit lane. We're about 90 seconds or so away from that getting underway, and it could be a completely different order here, couldn't it, now that you've got the same cars but with different drivers? Well,
absolutely, yeah, different skill levels, the Silver Cup, the Pro-Am Cup. It was, if you look at the results of Imola, very much Gus Bowers' session, sharing with Konstantin Lucknauer, that was inside the top 10 in Q1, we should expect to see that at the sharp end with Gus Bowers and taking victory in both the races as well as qualifying 2.
Nico Verdonk there with his back to you, talking through some of the data with Rodrigue Guillon, Belgian driver.
I mean, there's so much to take in for a less experienced driver as they go through the lap and say, right, you need to do that there, brake at that point, turn in at that point, and you run through the whole lap and be careful at this point because there's a bit of oil down there, whatever. Digest all that, sit in a race car in this heat of 30 degrees, and then go out and do what your driver coach has said. It's not easy, that's for sure.
The team manager of the Andronico and Mayel Porsche has got to go and see the stewards because there's a problem with the car's GPS system. There is this GPS that allows the race control team to identify where the car is on track and track limit abuses and pit lane speeding and the like. I'm not necessarily saying that's why it didn't go to time. I think there's something else that befell the car. Right, green light on at the end of the pit lane, and we are in business then, and one or two are going to wait and be released in due course, including there, Richard Distel's McLaren. That's the Rodrigue Guillon Aston Martin that Nico Verdonk was behind the wheel of for Q1, the Pro Sport racing car. It looks good in those colours, almost changes the shape of it, but Pro Sport, another experienced team. So again, trying to pick a pole position car out of this, well nigh impossible, isn't it?
Yeah, well, you definitely have to look at those silver-rated cars. The cars with in the Silver Cup with 2 silver drivers should be on a similar pace to what we saw from the Mercedes in that first session. Those are the ones to stare at. You would not expect a bronze driver, for instance, to be able to grab the pole position from the likes of Timo Nabors or Gus Bowers.
But Gus Bowers has got to be a candidate, given how well he went at Imola, even though he's switching cars this year from McLaren to Aston Martin. Gus Bowers really, really good in Italy. And here is Luke Ibañez, who is another driver that you oughtn't to discount, because we've seen in the past him be a race winner in this championship. Away now goes Ivan Jacoma, the bronze-graded Swiss driver with the Cayman. I say the Cayman, one of the many Caymans, which is good to see. And Ibañez comes out of the chicane, but only at the end of the next lap will we get a time out of him. So, of course, you do lose quite a chunk of time with an out lap, with an insulation lap here.
It's a long lap, isn't it?
Yeah.
Ultimately.
Just over 5K in length. You see those little markers we talked about early on, so keep those on your left-hand side, and you're fine. If they're on the right, you're in strife, and...
That's naughty.
That's naughty, yes. That's the wrong side of the white line.
Although, annoyingly, if you look at the way that the rubber's been laid down there, it's clear that it's kind of the racing line, as far out as possible. I'm sure race control have made very clear what you are and are not allowed to do there. But it does look as though the racing line is to go as wide as possible, keeping two wheels just on track.
And I suppose there's an element to say, try it early on in the session. If you get your wrist slapped, then you've got time to go again. So go for the limit early and then wind it back. You find drivers in other categories, I'm thinking touring cars here, do that. So go as far as you can to begin with and wait for the slap on the wrist and then wind it back a little bit. Number 50 BMW, which is the W&D Racing Team car out of the AM category. Paolo Meloni now at the wheel of it, taken over from Max Tresoldi. And there into the pit lane comes Ibañez. So what are they going to do? Cross the tyres over, maybe?
Yeah, interesting. Quite a fast push on that in-lap and really attacked the pit lane in-line. At the moment, work on the rear right-hand corner. They're just going to switch the rears?
I think so.
Yes, they have, haven't they?
Yeah, done a tyre cross, yeah.
Brand new tyres getting lined up for the front of the cars. This is an interesting strategy to go out on used tyres for one lap and now put the stickers on and waste a couple of moments in the pits as well by doing so. We saw the best times from those that went out straight away at around 12 to 15 minutes into the session, didn't we? So there is time. There is about 5 minutes to play with.
Ibañez there getting himself psyched up in the car. You can see him clapping his hands together, motivating himself because he needs to be on the money then for when they go out. So yeah, it is a new set of tyres. Also in, interestingly, is Paolo Meloni. But there's not much happening there other than the screen being cleared. And you'd have thought that would have been done in the break between sessions, wouldn't you?
A little bit of tyre pressure adjustment, I think, in the fronts as well. But
true.
Yeah, I must pit. I've got a bug on my window. It's too distracting. I can't possibly go further.
Must have been a huge one, that's right, yes. What's the last thing that goes through a fly's mind when it hits a car windscreen? Answer, its legs. Ho-ho. Number 67, Audi, is the Team 4 Motorsport car that Marc Lopez now takes over. They do like their yellow paint at Team 4 Motorsport, but it's always a distinctive car to identify. And Lopez now starts a flying lap.
Yeah, we should not complain as commentators about cars that are easy to spot.
This is very true. This is very true. So at the end of the lap that most people are now starting, we'll start to see lap times coming out of it.
3 cars have decided to go into the pit lane. A few we have yet to see. I think we've just seen the last of the cars that at the start of the session left, but 3 cars in being serviced. We've seen 2 of them, Ibañez and Meloni, and it's also Hartvig in the 44 Porsche that has come back into pits as well.
Yeah, Hartvig ought to be quick as well because he's normally there or thereabouts. But we'll start to get an idea at the end of this next lap as others now leave the pit lane. Luke Ibañez comes down the pit road ready to go.
It does seem as though the field is much more spread out than in the first session, where all the pros are chomping at the bit to get out as quickly as possible. And there is a decent spacing between them, and they all seem to be travelling at a similar speed. So that's good news for traffic anyway.
You're right, just going back a session, going back a story, you're right about Andronico losing his lap for track limits because the team are asking for that to be looked at because they don't think, and the driver, of course, says, I didn't go over the track limits, so they'd like, if possible, the officials to have another look at that, but it may be a forlorn hope because pretty much the decision has been made. Andreas Mayr then takes over 22, and we'll have to try and push now. 32 you're looking at is Johan Vannerum in the Sellerslach Mercedes, Patrick Sellerslach's team that was a mainstay of the FIA GT1 World Championship, you might remember, for a time, running Corvettes. you're right there about the field being more strung out. Now, whether this is the fact that the teams have opted to stagger the AMs a little bit more in some cases, who knows? But yes, relatively speaking, people aren't getting traffic. Jean-Luc Beaubelique takes over from Jim Pla, the redoubtable Jean-Luc Beaubelique, and he does encounter traffic, but because we're dealing with AMs, they put their indicators on and get out of harm's way, doing it very gentlemanly.
And he would have picked up a little bit of a slipstream from that Audi as well before going into senior, sending it into senior with the rear end just bouncing around a little bit.
So I thought he walloped the curb on the inside there because the car did seem to get very unsettled, didn't it? Right, now we do have Ivan Jacoma going the fastest in number 718 Cayman. So he's done a 2:15.378, which is a good first effort. Jean-Luc Beaubelique currently number 87, heading towards the timing line. So this ought to put him in the mix. Jean-Luc Beaubelique not as fast as Jim Pla, which is one of the fascinations of Pro-Am, seeing how the cars rise and fall depending on who is behind the wheel of it. But Jean-Luc Beaubelique heads towards the Virage du Pont, up towards the timing line. Now he will come. And he goes through. So Jean-Luc Beaubelique goes third fastest, which is a good effort. Second fastest, Loic Villiger, who has done a time just a fifth of a second slower than Jacoma, and an absolute best in the first sector by Ruben Delsart's Aston Martin. So Ruben Delsart, second generation racer, looking very quick, and also looking very quick right now is number 10 with Gus Bowers at the wheel.
Yeah, it looks on his toes, doesn't it, that Aston Martin? It looks like it's poised for battle as he threw it into the last couple of corners. The car really moving around underneath him. He's on the limit of adhesion, and this should be a good time with the second sector of the lap, best of anyone, and he does go fastest of all so far.
So Gus Bowers, pole position then, 2 minutes 13.587, good effort. And 12 minutes to go. Now, that's not to say he's going to be able to hang on to that, because straight away, Eric Debar goes up to second, 2 minutes 14.2 in the... sorry, I'll tell you a lie. Bastard goes second in the Santa Cloc Audi, and third, Pierre Sonsinena in the rest of the Alpines. Pierre Sonsinena very experienced in those cars. There, number 80, heading up through L'École, is Tom Verdier, and he's looking rapid with personal best in sectors as well.
4 Aston Martins in the top 10 in Q1, so the Aston Martin is obviously performing well around here. Plenty of them in the field. I'd say there's at least 8.
Yes.
I haven't counted exactly, maybe even 9.
So
times all coming through right now. We've got 37 cars that have set a time so far of the 50.
So Verdier up towards the line, 29th. The car was, and second it becomes. So that was a good effort as he went over the line.
And again, just the body language of the car, you can see it's being really loaded up through some of the corners, the rear end moving around a little bit on its tiptoes in the slower parts. And again, now focusing on Gus Bowers, going again for another lap faster than he was in Sector 1, fastest of anyone in Sector 2, and he's just been disposed of the top spot for the moment by the Camaro.
He has indeed, because up then to the top of the times goes Kenny Heremans. So Verdier now 4th, and it's a 2:13.3 that is the gun time. Gus Bowers is down to 3rd behind Christophe Amon, which is interesting actually, because Christophe Amon in the AM Audi doing a very, very good job to be ahead of some of the silvers. We
saw that, didn't we, in Imola? He was really up there.
Yeah, he's an experienced driver, granted, but showing good pace. Now, Gus Bowers goes quickest again, 2:13.262, and ends up second, because behind him, Luky Ibanez goes even faster, 2:13.259. So Ibanez, despite that enforced pit stop at the end of his first lap, is back up at the pointy end, 3 thousandths between them.
And it does mean that on those tyres, he is 1 lap fresher. So you would expect that Mercedes to go a little bit better once more. You know, there's probably a window of 2 or 3 laps where the tyres are at their best and the drivers are in the window, of which Gus Bowers started his session at the start of the session, and Ibanez started his session on the new tyre 5 minutes in. So I would say that Mercedes has got more pace in it. We were in the 12.5s, I think, in session 1, a 2:12.5, so 2:13.2, the fastest time right now. There is still time in the track, and some of these drivers are silver drivers, so they should be as experienced and as fast as some of the ones we saw in the first session.
It's good to see Kenny Harriman's going well in this car. Good to see the Chevrolet going well, because there's only one on the entry. They're always a little bit behind in terms of data that they can bring back for this car. It's very much an independent effort, but it goes really nicely. Harriman's then third, and Ibanez doing another absolute best in the first sector.
Oh, that's where the half a second is then. He's found it in the first sector alone. He was about half a second off what we saw in the first session, and now finds even more time in the second. This is going to be a mighty time from Ibanez as we check in with Harriman's to go across the line to improve his time. He does, but it's not going to be up pole for long.
No, it's fastest now, 2:13.073. Ibanez is a 10th back, but Ibanez has got traffic up the road, which might go against him. Let's see. So that's Gus Bowers, who is now down to 5th fastest. I think it's Ibanez who's right on his tail. Now, this could be a 10th loss late in the lap if Ibanez is unlucky. Not suggesting Gus Bowers will get in the way, but you just encounter a car when you don't want it, and it might be the crucial element to your lap. Ibanez, 2 absolute bests, purple in sector 1, purple in sector 2. He has arrived on the back of Gus Bowers. Look, it's going to be a drag race up towards the line. 8 minutes are on the clock. The time to beat is a 2:13.073. Is it beatable? It is. It is a 2:12.2 from Luc Ibanez. Wow. That is a stellar lap.
And that is faster than what we saw in the first session of the day as well. He's caught Gus Bowers. Bowers didn't improve on that lap time, so Bowers only managing a 14.6. But Ibanez, by following and closing in on Gus Bowers, has found a huge amount of time and a 0.8 of a second gap to anybody else.
Down towards the chicane then. Gus Bowers still hustles on. We have news of a spin and a car rejoining, which was, by the look of it, Ricard Distel at turn 10. So that's the Virage du Pont, and he had a moment there, we understand. Right, 7 minutes are on the clock. So it is Mercedes, Chevrolet, Aston Martin, Audi, the top 4. Good variety.
Good variety. We're still missing 4 cars to set a time. Hartwig, Mail and Guillon. Another one, the 4th one has now just set a time, so I can't tell you who that was. These are cars. Hartwig spent 5 minutes in pit lane doing whatever he needed to do, and Mail, who takes over from Andronico, spent 3 minutes in the pit, so they haven't really got whatever issue is sorted. Those 2 Porsches are still struggling, and they do owe us lap times.
And they're both out of the same stable, aren't they? They're both from the Allied Racing team, which makes you think that either it's a demon plan or there is something that they just can't quite get right on those cars. The best Porsche currently, you've actually got to go a long, long way down the order to 22nd, in fact, to find number 38 of Max Kronberg. So at the moment, you would argue it's not a Porsche circuit because they all seem to be struggling.
Mail now has set a time, but it's only 26th on his first lap. So he's still got a couple of laps in the tyres for sure, and we wait for Hartwig to complete our 50 runners.
Kenny Harriman's back to the top of the times. Ibanez's 2:12 lap has been taken away. So
that's how he found half a second.
That's how he found half a second, yes, my lad. So track limits, seemingly the reason for why that's disappeared. Gus Bowers here has done a personal best and an absolute best, as you can see. Personal is green, an absolute best is a purple sector, and the lap time strung together is 4th, in fact, he moves up to. So not quite as good as anticipated.
Just ahead of Christophe Hamon, who's now in pit lane. Maybe a little tyre pressure adjustment before a last push, but very much the best of the bronzes. We've got a car off.
That's an Alpine that's facing the wrong way, and now gets going again, and that is Pierre-Laurent Figuier, I think, yes. So Figuier rejoins for the Arcadia Racing squad. Thankfully, no damage done there.
So Harriman's, Ibanez, Sasse, Bowers and Hamon are your top 5. Christophe Hamon, by far the best bronze driver by a good couple of cars.
And to get excited about McLaren's for a moment, in Pro-Am, Tim Whale, after a layoff of 20+ years from racing, is currently 2nd in the class. So the car is taken over from Adam Carroll. Tim Whale, who's never raced here before either, is making it absolutely fly, going really, really well. 89, which is Julien Lambert. sharing with Wilfried Casalmont, rides the curb there, doesn't he, coming out of Beausset, but he's not got too much traffic to worry about. This car currently is 8th fastest. We've had another absolute best from Luc Ibanez in the first sector, and as long as he's been the right side of the curbs, then that should stand him in good stead for the rest of the lap. 4 minutes to the checkered flag.
Lambert is the second of the all-AM entries, so a couple of positions behind Christophe Hamon, but the nearest challenger to him, and just a little improvement will get him onto the tail of the Audi. As I say, Ibanez has gone faster in the first sector by 0.3 of a second. It's not quite the stellar second sector that he managed previously. Now we pick him up in the third sector of the lap. This could well be enough to get him back onto the provisional pole. But finding he found half a second in sector 1, half a second in sector 2 last time. So yes, it must have been in sector 2 where the transgression was.
Okay, so he's heading up towards the timing line. If this unravels as well, there's still time in the session for one more, but hopefully the team would have been on the radio saying just wind it in a little bit at whichever corner. Up towards the line comes Ibanez then, and he goes fastest on a 2:12.806. That puts him back at the top by 0.2 of a second from Kenny Heremans, and then Gaspard's third, with fourth now being Hugo Sassa in another of the Aston Martin. So finally Ibanez has done it. He's got himself up to the top. 2:12.8 becomes the time to beat. He's the only driver in the 2:12s as well.
He's backed off from the tail of Gus Bowers and now caught Bowers again. So there was a slow lap from Ibanez. Ibanez is pushing on, and now Gus actually gets out of the way, because Gus's last lap was an improvement and he got himself up one position, but he must feel as though he's got the best out of that car and tyre now as the session comes to a close. Whereas Ibanez, having started the session a little later, having pitted at the start of the session, possibly still has something in those tyres, although having had to do a pass, he is not as fast through sector 1. Jean-Louis Navarro facing the wrong direction.
Indeed, so that is approaching the Virage Dupont. That's just before the last corner where he's lost it, and there'll be a yellow flag there. He's going to get going eventually once there's a gap in the traffic. But of course, approaching that, there'll be a yellow, and you shouldn't be improving your lap time if there's a yellow flag out. So for some drivers, this is exactly the wrong thing at the wrong moment, and damage to the back of the Supra of Romain Monti. Now, has that been savaged by a barrier or by another car? It has made a right mess of the now not so Toyota Supra.
That car was up right at the sharp end with Antoine Potti in the first session, the number 66. You would expect Monti to be there and thereabouts as well, but he was a bit late into setting a time in the session. He's 11th position and still improving despite shedding bits of bodywork. So
up towards the chicane comes Monti. He's certainly trying hard enough, and I feel that the scrutineers will let that car go to the end now. It's a little bit dangerous with it flapping around at the back, but hopefully there won't be a black and orange that scuppers any chance of an improved lap time. 11th the car is currently.
I wonder what's done that, because it almost looks like a tear more than anything else.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like an impact.
Unless somebody was very close and trying to go from one side to the other, just skimmed it, and like, as you say, a tear, like opening a tin can, just peeled the bodywork away.
And it's now peeling more.
It is, as the air gets to it. And even though it's only a peel or a tear, it's still not a €5 repair bill, that. It'll be a whole new section to go on the rear of the car, the rear valance. So there'll be some work for the team to do before they get to the opening race this afternoon. Number 4 Mercedes hustles on Robert Haub, the American driver, at the wheel of it. Romain Monti started well and then lost out in the middle sector. The CMR Toyota, CMR standing for Classic Modern Racing, heads up towards the line. There you can see the damage that has been done.
It is also affecting the airflow under the car as well. That'll make the car a little bit looser. Not a huge amount of aero on these GT3 cars, certainly much less than in GT3. So it's not aero in GT4, but even if there's not that much, you still feel that. You'll still have a bit of a vibration coming through the steering wheel, and it won't feel quite as it should do. But Monti doesn't improve, stays 11th position.
And the flag is out now because we've got to the end of the 20 minutes, so that car may bail. It will rather perhaps depend on what happens in the first sector. If the car is looking good, they might persevere with a lap, but Romain Monti hustles on in that 3-litre Toyota Supra.
we might have an improvement from Hugo Sasse as well in the second of the Aston Martins. I think we're probably trying to pick him. He'll be coming across the line shortly, and he has done a better sector in sectors 1 and 2. Here he is, 4th position for the moment. Will he go ahead of Gus Bowers, though? No. Oh, losing a lot of time in the last sector.
He did, didn't he? So Hugo Sasse perhaps feeling that things weren't quite right. Looked like he backed off a little bit, but even that, 2:13 would still put him in the top 15 as a lap time alone, so it's pretty decent. Romain Monti comes through and drags the remains of the Toyota to the checkered flag.
Yeah, Monti is still pushing in the second sector of the lap now, faster in the first sector than he's been before, but now backs off. So I think that's pretty much it in terms of people that can improve. And we have all 50 cars with a lap time set as well.
So where do we get Andreas Mayr then in the end? Only 37th. Now he did prove at Imola that although he was a safe pair of hands, he wasn't as quick in terms of outright pace as Vincent Andronico. So Andronico looks like he's going to have to do the hard work again here.
Well, the team as a whole, they've got 2 very difficult races to contend with. 2 sessions of qualifying now finished, and they'll be looking at the timing screens and they'll be looking at the results of qualifying and thinking, gosh, we have got a big 2 days ahead of us. This afternoon's race just after 4 o'clock, and then tomorrow morning, it's not really morning, 11:25.
But different temperatures potentially. You know, one is going to be as the temperature is dropping, one is as the temperature is rising. That's tomorrow's race, so that will affect partly the driver, partly the tyres as well in different ways. And that could also help to give us 2 very different results. Cars are still pouring through to take the checkered flag, but nobody looks as though they're going to beat Luki Ibaniev, who has done a very good job. Let's have a quick look then at the order. Luki Ibaniev is the fastest at the end of Q2, with second fastest Kenny Heremans and Gus Bowers third, Hugo Sasse fourth from Christophe Amon. Luca Bosco was sixth from Attila Rabindra, Julien Lambert eighth, ninth Vincent Beltoise, and Robert Consony rounding out the top 10. 11th quickest despite the damage, Romain Monti ahead of Alex Hartvig, and then Owen Bastard. Tom Verdier was 14th and Pierre Sonsenena in the Alpine 15th quickest, 16th in the end. The BMW number 12 with Will Burns behind the wheel of it from Laurent Hergon, then Timon Nabours 19th. Tim Whale, really good effort ahead of Eric Debar, bearing in mind that this is the first time that Tim Whale has ever raced here. So, good lively qualifying. We look forward to our GT4 Race 1 coming up later on this afternoon from Paul Ricard. Join us for that if you can. From Ben Constant, Juris and David Addison for now. Goodbye.